Hello and welcome to another episode of Laptop Retrospective, and today I am here to test something out, and it's in this little baggie right here, and this is from SaotoTech, and it is essentially a single person operation out of Japan that is 3D printing a new style of TrackPoint. And when I say new, I mean new for this form factor, and I'll put some diagrams of these up on the screen because they're probably going to be really difficult to see physically here, but they're based on essentially the old golf tee design, and they're 3D printed out of a rubberized material, so it is a little firmer than, say, the original TrackPoint, but offers a different experience. And if you know very little about the history of TrackPoint caps, then I absolutely insist that you check out this video right here, where I talk to David Hill and how he worked with the design of these to get the modern one that we have today. And I think what's really interesting is that there were three TrackPoint caps eventually shipped with ThinkPads up until a few years ago. One was the soft rim, which is now the industry standard, the cat tongue, and then of course the golf tee, and this is essentially just that. So my intent is I will be removing this and trying this for 1 week. And I'll also be posting it on Twitter and the YouTube comment feed, so you can ask me any questions that you might have about this new TrackPoint cap. So without further ado, I'm going to take the old one off. And as you can see, there's a bit of a rubbery bounce to it. And we're going to go ahead and put the new TrackPoint cap on. And there we go. It fits really nicely, and it is pretty darn flush with the keys. If we take a look at the thickness, it is essentially identical, which is good, because the last thing that we want to have happen, of course, is this damage the screen. That would be very bad. So I'm going to be giving this a try, seeing what it's like to use the TrackPoint with this kind of cap. And I have high hopes, because I think the soft rim is good when you have the depth. But I think the golf tee design might have a bit of a renaissance if this is worthwhile. So I'm going to stop recording now, and then 1 week later, you'll see me in a couple seconds. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so I have been using the SaotoTech TrackPoint cap here for 1 week, and then what I did is I actually switched back to the original TrackPoint cap just so I could kind of compare, once again, some key points between these two. Now, one of the things that I do need to say as a bit of a disclaimer is, of course, the manufacturer of this third-party TrackPoint cannot guarantee the safety of your screen. As you can imagine, this is not factory. Therefore, if, say, something strange were to happen where external pressure is put on the top case, the TrackPoint is obviously going to be the tallest pole in the tent, as David Hill would say. And because of that, it could apply pressure to the screen. Now, I've owned the X1 Nano for over a year, and I know for a fact that this problem is not necessarily going to be unique to the original TrackPoint cap, which is this fellow right here. Now, because of this, I have done two things. The first is I actually measured the original TrackPoint cap height and width within the same dimensions as the aftermarket one. I came to some figures that show that the height difference is quite negligible. We're talking about 1/10 of a millimeters difference. However, I do understand that precision is important, and I conducted what I would consider to be a somewhat brave test. And what I actually did is I put both of the TrackPoint caps on, and then I compressed the laptop. And I'll just splice in some footage of the result of that. And as you can see, both TrackPoint caps do leave an imprint on the screen when the laptop is compressed with what I would call moderate force. Now, neither one of these left any permanent marks to the screen. The only marks that was left behind is, of course, where oil and dirt had built up on the actual TrackPoint cap itself. All that being said, I obviously cannot guarantee, and neither can the manufacturer of this third-party TrackPoint cap, that your screen would never be damaged with its use. However, I'm not 110% certain that a similar fate might not befall such an incredibly thin device if the correct amount of pressure was placed upon it. The build materials are ever so slightly different though, so just be aware that if you are traveling with your laptop and it is under significant stress or compression, that you just might want to either avoid that TrackPoint cap or just have it separately stored and then switch over to this fellow. So with all that being said, let me just go ahead and talk about what it was like to use this TrackPoint cap in comparison to the original soft dome. And to do that, we're going to go on a macro level because the differences that we have to talk about are very, very specific. And here's what I mean by that. So, if we take a look at the original TrackPoint cap, the soft dome, which is based off of this fellow right here, we can see that there is a significant difference in height if we tip it on its side. I can't even really do that so much with this one, just because of how thin it is. And that produces a very interesting result. And I've been using TrackPoints for many, many years. But the depth is actually fairly important, especially with the stick underneath that this is being attached to. So what you end up having is what I would call a middle sweet spot. And what I mean by that is, so long as the force that you're applying is essentially originating in the center of the TrackPoint cap, you're going to have pretty responsive experience. It's as the cap wears down or as you use it extensively without lifting up and you move to the sides of the cap, that's where your experience will vary. And this is where you might be pressing very hard on the TrackPoint cap and not necessarily producing an equal result that you would see on the screen. And that is where this fellow comes in, because the sweet spot is a bit of a misnomer because it's all around this edge. And I would imagine that that was the intent of the original golf tee style that was made way back in the day, although it didn't have the bumps on the inside like this. Now, what this means is, in terms of a user experience, is that as you move out to these fringe points, you actually get an increased amount of acceleration rather than a decreased amount of acceleration. What you will probably find putting this on is that it will feel incredibly sensitive to start, because you will go to put in the normal amount of energy that you're used to on the center point, and then what you're going to come to realize is that as soon as you hit those edges, there is a significant amount of leverage being applied to the actual point stick part of the TrackPoint. So, all that being said, what you really have is the edge is your sweet spot, and depending on physically where you are using your computer, this is actually really helpful. If you're moving around and not necessarily on a desk a whole lot, or your surfaces are very strange and irregular, where you might be putting your laptop, this is actually quite nice. If you're on a regular old desk though, you'll probably find that this cap works just as good. Now, for the purists out there, you can obviously tell that this is more of a candy red color, and then this is the, of course, more traditional TrackPoint color. This one might be a better example because it's a little, it's a little newer. This one has literally been used for an entire year. This one is brand new. But as you can see, the color difference is rather noticeable, and that just has to do with the 3D printed materials. The other part to note is that this, of course, is made out of one solid injection molded material. There's no real different levels of components. It's all made out of the same material. It's very squishy and malleable. Whereas this 3D printed one is, I believe, actually a several step process. So the materials that are on the bottom end, maybe even the print method, I'm not 100% sure on that, is a little bit different. So if you take a look at a cross section of this one, there's a little bit more going on in terms of how it's constructed and its materials. So all in all, which do I prefer? Honestly, I don't know. They're both fantastic, and I'm not saying that as a cop-out. I'm legitimately torn between which one I actually prefer more. And I think to do this test full justice, I would need to compare it against a brand new TrackPoint and not one that's been worn down over a year. However, I think that if you are looking for a different TrackPoint experience, or you're just looking for a bit more leverage around the edge, I think that this has some real appeal and some real value. So I'll be leaving some links in the description down below where you can order your own. And then, yeah, I think I have said everything that I can possibly think to say on the issue. If you do have any questions, please feel free to put them down in the comment section below. And as always, I would strongly encourage you to please like the video, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so the next time I get the opportunity to feature a cool ThinkPad accessory like this, you'll be the first to know about it. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.